Hello. I'm waiting for Psychic Sean to join. I'm not sure if he's hopped on here yet. Sometimes, things happen, life happens. Oh, good. I'm glad it's better now. I got a little sore throat here. I don't know if I can. Let's see. I'm just trying to figure this out. I'm going to press buttons. If you lose me, I'll be right back. Add host. Let's see if this works. I don't see his name on there. Add guest. Nope, I want to add a host. So we'll see. Hi, everyone. It might take a couple minutes. Trina Jenkins, hello. Arlen, hi. So nice to see you. Make Coco. I don't know. Thank you for the follow. Hi. Let's see. Agari Bay. Hi. Share the live to him if you have his number. Yeah, I did that. Let's see. I sent that to him, so we'll see. I don't know, maybe, hopefully he pops on here in a second. Hi, Dobie Mama. So nice to see you. I'm saying make my reading first. Okay. Let's see. Hi from Florida. I'm going to Florida. My son's getting married in St. Augustine, Tasha One Love, in June. So I will be down there. We go to Florida every year. I live in California now, but we have lived in Savannah, Georgia before. And so we've gone to Florida many, many, many times. Thank you, Tasha. I'm in California, Northern California. That's where I'm at. Right now, let me see. I have not seen him pop on here yet. Aloha from Maui, Hawaii. I don't know. Flip camera. I'm just trying to figure out where he's at. I wish I could hear from my mom. Going through a lot. Well, just know that your mom is always going to be around you and always going to be... Oh, somebody's making noise in the other room. She's always going to be guiding you and around you. Love the painting above the door. Thank you. These are all my paintings. I do this when I meditate. I paint. I'm in Indiana with a ton of snow. Yeah, there's no snow where I'm at. Hi from Texas. So these paintings I paint when I meditate, I've got hundreds of them. They're all over the place. Oh, yay. Okay, here he comes. Here we go.
Hey, Nick.
Hi. Oh, I didn't know if I was doing it right.
I'm so sorry. I was
Okay.
running around the house trying to get things done, and my boyfriend's sister lives with us, her and her girlfriend, and they were leaving, so they were causing noise, and I'm like, can y'all just get out of my house? And then I was like, okay, let's get connected, and it wouldn't connect, and I'm just like, ah.
Yeah, I didn't know what
Look.
was the wonderful guests on here told me to invite you, so I think I invited you, but I'm not sure I've never invited anybody that I
It's
can
okay,
remember.
because here we are. We got it
Here we
going.
are. Here we are. I got my Niners shirt on. My Niners won yesterday at the last second against Green Bay, which I was thrilled about. I
Is
love
that
sports.
Oh, see, no, I'm a gay, and so I
That's
like
okay.
sports. I like sports when they're just showing the men being attractive, and so
Yes. Have you seen the Niners quarterback? Look him up.
I will. And I'm a big fan of cheerleaders because anyone who can flip on top of each other is insanely interesting to me. And I'm like, I have
It
friends who are
takes
like,
a lot
Sean,
of talent.
it does. I am super interested in cheerleading because to me, it is as much gymnastics as you would see in the Olympics. So I like that. So I like the little
It takes
halftime shows too.
body strength, a lot of body strength for
I can
sure.
imagine. So
No,
how are you today?
I'm great. Yesterday I had a bunch of wonderful readings, and then I started my free mediumship class that I offer. It's 3 free classes. I have 2 sessions of that going on right now. So, like every week is a different session, and it went really well. Some really talented, wonderful ladies were in the class, and they were just nervous, and it was their first time trying mediumship, and so it went really well. And the Niners won, so I was excited about that last night. I know you.
Just a blessed day. So, speaking of starting out, I would love to hear how you got started in mediumship from going from science to mediumship, because
Oh,
that was my number one question.
okay. So I have been working in science communication and science education, and I won't say the organizations I work with because incognito.
That's fine.
Um, but I've been doing that for a very long time, and I still sit on some boards for certain organizations. My specialty is I am a subject matter expert on the planet Mars and astrobiology. So if anybody,
What?
yeah, yes,
Can we give a round of applause to this like badass fucking scientist over here? Like 1A women in science, yay. And
yes, it's
she is
very
a
hard.
subject matter specialist on the subject of Mars. Oh,
Yes.
that is so cool. Okay, please
So I've
continue.
been working towards humans to Mars missions and advocacy for over a decade, and that is like right in my heart. Like, oh, like that makes my heart go pitter patter. And there's this new James Webb Space Telescope that's going to look at the beginning of the universe and discover planets and other solar systems, and that's the other half of my heart. Like those things just make me ugh. So I was working. I still am involved in science communication and science education. I do have a full. Oh no, is that me? Is that me going out?
Oh, my phone. No, it
Oh,
was me. It was
okay.
me.
So I have a full-time job in science education, and then the part-time advocacy work. And then the full story is I've always had psychic experiences my whole life. My mother was very psychic. She died very young. She was only 40. So, but she
Wow.
didn't have any training. And she had a lot of social anxiety. You know how it is when someone doesn't have training. And she
Yeah.
didn't really, she talked about experiencing entities and all kinds. She predicted her death a month before she died. She sat on the living room
Wow.
couch, and she was 40. So I was like, she's just crazy. And she said, I'm gonna die soon. And as far as I knew, there was nothing wrong with her, um, except for her alcoholism. But that's a different story. And yes, 1 month later, she died right in
Wow.
front of me on the floor. So I was doing my science stuff, science stuff, science stuff. I knew I was psychic, but I didn't really take it seriously, because it's
Yeah.
subtle and you're like, it could be a coincidence. But I had some prophetic dreams and some experiences. One of them I can think of is we were driving down the highway with our 2 sons in the back of the car, going on vacation, and I told my husband, slow down. In about 30 seconds, there's going to be an accident in front of us. And he slowed down, and lo and behold, there was an accident right in front of us. And
Look at
so,
you saving your lives.
well, and stuff like that happened. But then the biggest mediumship stuff was, and I feel like I'm talking too much, but
You're not. This is. I love this. I've wanted to hear your story for a while.
thank you. My sister called me, and a son's friend passed away that day. And I hadn't seen him since he was a baby 25 years prior to this. So he was 25 years old. And as soon as she said he passed, in my head, heroin overdose, just immediately. And I remember, hadn't seen him in 25 years, knew nothing about him at
Mm-hmm.
all. And I laid down a couple hours later to take a nap. And there he was in my head, full 3-dimensional, full color face and top of his red sweater. And he said,
Oh.
tell my mom I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it. And so I got up. I hadn't even been there 30 seconds laying down. I got up. I'm like, oh my God.
I know
So
that feeling.
Yeah, like what happened? I called my sister, told her what happened, talked to this was over a couple of days time. Call the mother contacted my sister and was like, "Oh my god, has this ever happened to her before?" And I'm like, "Well, kind of, but not like that." And 4 days later, we found out he did pass of a heroin overdose. And so, and the picture of his face and sweater and necklace he was wearing, I described was exactly correct. And I later, after I got some training, gave her a reading, which was awesome and cathartic. And that was my first experience. And I just kind of blew it off and didn't really think much. And then another person close to the family passed. And my son was with this lady at the time of her passing. She had a head injury. And um, when that night I was in bed and she kept showing me this red heart, this red, bright red heart, like this big, and it
Mm-hmm.
had her name on it. And I was like, what is happening? I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't think. Red heart, just bam, 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 bam. So I texted my son, who was in another house at the time, and I said, Isaiah, Dottie won't stop showing me this red heart. Please help me. What does this mean? I don't know what's going on. I can't sleep. I can't think. Immediately, he texted me back a picture of this red heart with her name on it that he had picked up when she died, like that day. Like that just happened. Like
Wow.
he was with her, her passing. He went to her nightstand. He picked up this red heart. And then I was like, I've got to get training because this is something that I can't explain as a scientist.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going on. So I went on YouTube, of course, and looked at all these different mediums. And I found a medium in the UK. And I've been getting training with her ever since. And her name's Danielle, the Happy Medium. She has the Oddbod School of Mediumship, and she's
That's
just
cool.
a wonderful, just matter of fact, say it like it is person. And I am eternally grateful to her. I love
That
her.
is one. That sounds like an amazing story. I remember when I was first. So I first started knowing things. I'm sorry, I had scratched my nose before I came on here, and now it's bugging the hell out of me. I look like
Go for
freaking
it.
Rudolph. And so when I was like 14, I went in homeschooling. Everyone knows about that story. But I had started thinking about how I had known things about everybody. And I never really got to act on any of it, like, getting permission about there being an accident. I never really knew how to act upon that. I was 14 years old. And so I remember couple of years later, I had started studying tarot and things like that. And we were living in an apartment, my dad and my mom and I. Um, and my nephew was into like doing tricks on his bike. He was like 10, 11 at the time. And I saw him on his bike getting hit by a car in the driveway of the apartment building we lived in. And I was like, "Hey, Christian, can you come here, please? Just come here right now." And he walks his bike over, and then we're talking for a second, and then a car passes, and I was like,
Hmm.
"That's suspicious." I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's suspicious," and I was
Yeah.
like, "Coincidence, coincidence." So I had started because I was always this little entrepreneur. I had this little home business of making donuts in the apartment building. So I
Oh,
had this huge fry daddy, and I made donuts and stuff like that. And I'd sell them in the apartment building, and it was always from the guy who smoked pot, who was the maintenance guy who bought a bunch of them.
obvious.
So I made a little money. But one morning, so I have two nephews. One was like 3 at the time, and I saw him like yank on the cord for the Fry Daddy, and it all just pour over him. And we know how that happened, what happens with that.
Yeah.
So I saw him like being rushed into the shower and everything, and so I'm sitting in the living room, and I'm just like, this is a very uncomfortable like knowing, like why am I seeing this out of nowhere? And all of a sudden, I see him come running out of the bedroom, and I'm like, run to the kitchen, unplug everything, move everything out of the way, and I was like, man, this is suspicious. I just kept going, suspicious. This is suspicious,
Yeah.
and never really because it was always avoided. Nothing really ever came of it, thank God. But I'm like, there was nothing there that was linchpin to
Yeah.
signify that this was definitely precognitive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, it wasn't until I started messaging everyone I went to school with where I was like, this is the stuff I knew about you. This is the stuff I saw in my head about you when you were bullying me or whatever. And they were like, yeah, all that happened and I never told anybody. And I was like,
Mm.
this is weird. This is not suspicious. This is weird. So, um, but my first real evidential, for me, it was the first. It was I was doing a spiritual investigation with this group. Uh, I had my sister-in-law. She asked me to go investigate this house and go do a reading for a house because I had been reading tarot cards for about, let's see, 16 to 19, so 3 years. And she's like, "Can you read on the house?" She's like, "They say it's haunted." I was like, "Yeah, that's not a problem." And at the time, I had been studying mediumship, so I was still working with this premise of like haunted houses and things like that,
Hmm.
and not realizing it's just residual energy. And so I go in there, I'm doing the reading on the house, and I'm like, "It was an old woman who died here," and they're like, "Yeah." I said, "Were y'all her neighbor?" Because she's telling me something about y'all being her neighbors, and they're
Wow.
like, "Yeah." I said, "When y'all were kids?" She's like, "Yeah." I was like, "She hated y'all. Why'd y'all move into her house?" And they're like, "We used to trespass all the time, and she used to get mad at us because we were always on her property." And I was like, "So you took over her property after she died? Y'all deserve everything you get." And that led to us going to another investigation where I got the group came in. I didn't know them at the time. They came in and they asked me to investigate with them, and they asked me to join the group as the sensitive. I was like, "Sure." So we go to this other house, the first investigation with them officially, and they're like, "Well, we're going to test you." And I was like, "Fun."
Ugh.
So they're like, "We're going to do reading for the house, and then you're going to reading for the homeowner." Okay, not a problem. We get there. She walks me through the house, and I get to the first room, and I'm like, "This is a boy's room." Da da da. I don't give much about him. We get to the second room, and I stop at the door. I felt like like something stopped me, and I remember looking at her and going, "I feel the need to pay my respects before I go into this room." And she
Mm.
looked at yeah, she looked at Shelly, the case manager, and she was like, "Okay." So I'm like, "Is it okay if I go?" And she's like, "Yeah." So I go in, and I see this young man laying on the bed with his ankles crossed, and he's like laying on his shoulder like this. And I said, "I see laying like this." I said, "There's this going on." I don't know what's going on, but there's something odd about this." She's like, "Okay." So I do the reading for her later, and I pick up this young man with blue eyes. I said, "I see your son." She's like, "Which one?" I was like, "Well, shit, the one with blue eyes." And she's like, "How do you know he has blue eyes?" I said, "Because I can see them." And she says, "Okay, that would be my middle son, the only one with blue eyes, because she had three of them." And I was like, "Oh, I got that. That was really cool."
Yeah.
I was like, "I see this ball of, he's just this ball of energy." And my dumb ass, not having gotten into mediumship at all at the time, he's just a ball of light. He's just high vibrational. He's just super energetic. I just see him flying around the room, not at all realizing I'm describing a spirit. I break down and start crying. I feel like my chest is being ripped open and I start screaming like
Oh.
on autopilot. I feel like I lost my son. I feel like I lost my son. I get escorted out of the
Oh.
house
Was he passed
and
though? Was her son passed?
yes.
Okay.
And he was found exactly the way I described him laying in the bed. And I was like, "I quit. I want to go home."
Oh, that gives
Like,
me chills.
I was like,
That
"I
gives
quit. I
me
want to go home."
chills.
I needed alcohol. And so, like, I was
Wow.
so, and after that, I was like, I'm like, I'm a psychic. I don't do dead people. I'm not Sylvia Brown. That started a lot of, we did a lot of investigations. We investigated the cemetery in Natchitoches, Louisiana, which is the oldest cemetery in the country.
Hmm.
And, um, and so it led to a lot of like me exploring spirits. And then I kind of didn't do anything with it. I just read tarot for years, and then my mom got sick, and
Mm.
my mom did very similar to you. Started. She didn't predict her death, but she started getting signs that she wasn't long for this world, because and this is before she went into hospice. She started seeing herself in spirit, and she started having dreams
Wow.
where she was um, seeing herself living in this house with loved ones, with her dog that had died, and she's like, "I don't think I'm gonna make it."
Mm.
And I was like, first of all, shut up.
Yeah. How
So
old was she?
she was 63.
And how
Um,
old were you?
I was 27. I was 26, 27. Had just turned 27, I believe. Yeah.
I
And
thought you were 30 now. Are you like I
I'm 35.
somebody
I'll be 35 in March.
oh, okay. Well, you look good, girl. You look good.
Well, thank you. It's the humidity and the
Oh,
fact
I
that I
know. I
don't get
used to live in Savannah, Georgia.
that humidity is like a constant like steam facial, and it's the fact that I just don't do sunlight. So sun's trying to kill us, and it takes about 100 years. And so so yeah, and when she got sick, I had just started working with a medium here in New Orleans, and I was living 2 hours away in a town called New Iberia, and I would come back monthly to do psychic fairs. And he was like, "Hey, Sean, I watch you work, and you're not reading psychically, you're reading mediumistically." And I was like, "What do you mean?"
Oh,
And he's like, "Well, when you read, he's like, I can feel like spirit overshadow you, and like you're getting stuff not from the cards and not from just energy." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
interesting.
So he's like, "I want to train you in mediumship," and he I said, "That's fine, we can do that." And I had taken one class before my mom died, and I worked a psychic fair the day before she passed, and I had done an aura photo. And in the aura photo, which I
Wow.
have somewhere, I need to post it, you can see my mom standing behind me in my aura. And he's like, "Sean, I don't think she's going to be here very long." And I was like, fuck. So I like booked it home, and she died the next day.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay. So after that, when I started getting all those signs and all that stuff, I was like, okay, so mediumship is what we're doing. We're heavily, heavily doing this. And so um, it's been quite a while, but I had been studying it for years because it kept coming up throughout my journey as a psychic. And I kept having little accidental mediumship readings.
Hmm.
And I started following like John Edwards. I started following. I didn't follow Sylvia Brown at the time. I mean, she was dead, but um, it was a thing where I kind of would go back and listen to her work, and I'd listen to John Edwards' work, and it was something that was like, okay, this is not an option. And it started off as something I did for my healing. And then it was like, I felt like I was bogarting it, I felt like I was stealing it from everyone else. So I was like, okay, let me just give it to everyone else. So that's what ended up here because, you know, and then crazy shit happens and yeah. But I
I
love,
wanted to say about Sylvia Brown. I completely forgot until about a month ago when I saw a TikTok about her years ago, probably 15 or 20 years ago. She used to be on Montel Williams.
yeah,
The
I
one
love,
I used
that's where
to
my mom and I would
watch
watch it.
that, and I started buying her books and I read all of her books, but I never thought I was a medium. I just liked reading about it and all that because that was so long ago.
Hmm.
And John Edward. I watched his show. James Von Prague. I watched his show. All different kinds of stuff, and I was always so interested in it, but I never really thought that was me until
Yep.
later. And I'm like, oh my god, maybe all that background is in there somewhere.
Right? Like I had the same thing. My mom and I, we watched Sylvia every time she was on Montel. We watched Crossing Over with John Edwards. My
Yep,
mom thought he was so cute. My mom loved him.
he's on TikTok now.
I know. I'll keep trying
Yeah.
to get his attention just because I'm a fangirl. Um, but growing up in Cajun culture, the problem I had was the fact that this was an everyday occurrence. I grew up with my mom telling stories about how she would hold seances in her house. I grew up with her telling stories about how she would have spiritual experiences all the time. And my uncle Lee, who is a like triple degree black belt with whatever Bruce Lee did, like he's this hardcore guy. He's he got stuck in the swamp one time and he cut his hand open and sewed it up himself. Like he's that kind of like I don't you don't mess with him. He called us one day because his he was fixing himself some coffee and the coffee cup slid across the counter. And he called my mom and she was like, "Well, yeah, you know how it used to happen all the time when we were kids." I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, you'd put a bowl down on the kitchen table and it would slide across the table." And I
I
was
have a
like,
story.
"Mom." So growing up in Cajun culture, there was this idea of like mediumship was stupid because spirit ghosts were every day.
Yeah.
Like there was no need for them. So I remember when my mom and I would watch Sylvia Brown, she'd sit there and be like, she's wrong. It's actually this. And my mom would just know shit. And so growing up, I was so desensitized to it, there was no real idea that I could actually be that. Because it was seen as it was seen as like hokey. And so I remember
Mhm.
we watched her do Sylvia Brown Montel one day, and this woman stood up and she's like, "So Sylvia, am I ever going to meet a man?" And my mom started giggling, and I was like, "What?" She's like, "She's a lesbian. She's never going to meet a man. She's doing this to trick Sylvia." And I was like, "How do you know that?" She's like, "Because I can tell." She's like, "I just feel it." She's like, she has ulterior motives." And Sylvia's like, "Oh, you're going to get married in a year," and she looks down at her female friend and was like, "Okay, sure," and sits down. And my mom's like, "See?" And I was like, "Deborah, do you need to discuss some stuff with me?" And she's like, I said, "Are you psychic?" She's like, "No, I'm not psychic. That's just normal." She says, "I'm Cajun.
Sure. Sure.
I'm Cajun, Sean." And so I remember when I started having these spiritual experiences in my mid-teens, I was like, "Mom, I think I'm a medium," because at this time we're watching John Edwards, and I said, "I think I'm a medium," and she's like, "You're not a medium. Only like special people are mediums. You're Cajun," and I was like, "Thanks." So it just completely washed out, and I was like, to this day, I'm like, that's why I never really went after it when I was younger, because I was just Cajun, and so, ugh. But that's my history with Sylvia Brown and John Edwards, because I loved them, but my mom was like, "You're Cajun. There's just ghosts everywhere."
That's it's so interesting because when I know that in like my very tiny little bitty bit of knowledge of Cajun culture, there's a lot of like spiritual stuff that's pretty second nature and it's not thought of as a big deal to
Exactly.
have spiritual experiences. I wanted to say two things. I have a crazy story about things moving, and I
Okay.
wanted to talk about. I had a troll the other day, my favorite, um,
Love them.
and the love spell trolls. Those they're out of control. I block. I had
Yep.
a troll. Prove it to me. Well, what do you want me to prove? What prove what? Like you want me to give you a reading here on TikTok, typing out a message because I said if you don't believe, you don't believe. I
Yeah.
can't convince you of something you don't believe. So that was annoying. So they got blocked. But then when I was, you're not old enough to remember the show Soap, but it was this nighttime
Yeah.
drama. Oh, okay.
Soap was the
So
first time they had
about
a gay character.
Oh, okay. Okay. Awesome. So about 1978, 80, somewhere in there. I don't remember the exact year because I was a little kid. We were watching the episode of Soap where the baby was possessed. They had a possessed baby. I was sitting next to my mom on a couch. My baby sister was sitting next to her, and my mom was here, and there was a big old heavy nightstand next to us, and our big German Shepherd was underneath the nightstand laying down, and there was a love seat, and my sister and her boyfriend were sitting there. The boyfriend
Mm,
is still family friends with us to this day and remembers
nice.
this. Okay, in the middle of the show, and my mom's reading a UFO book. She was so into UFOs and paranormal and aliens and everything. We're just sitting there. I'm sitting next to my mom watching this baby possessed show. The drawer, big old heavy piece of furniture, the top drawer shot out over the dog 10 feet into the middle of the floor, landed in the middle of the living room. And the boyfriend was like, well, that's my cue. And he took off. And we're all sitting there like, no explanation. Obviously we have no explanation for that. But
Yeah.
the whole entire family was there. Everybody saw it happen. And we're just like, what was that? It was crazy. So, like, she had telekinesis, I guess. She was so into her stuff, it just, whoop, I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. What do you think that was?
I fully believe in, so I know that with in physical mediumship that it's an energetic ectoplasm that just moves things. Like that's pretty much how table tipping and things work, is that the energy of the room becomes tangible. So I know for a fact, like for instance, like um, when people talk about poltergeists, poltergeists are due to the fact that there's an energy in the family that has become volatile. And we see this a lot when people are going through puberty, and when we see this a lot when there's a lot of like negative interactions in the household, because it's like, um, because you know how when those two like those neodymium magnets they hit and they spark,
Hmm.
that attraction, that energy is hitting so hard because people are fighting energetically, it creates this blast of energy that just like affects the house, and that becomes tangible. And I've seen that in houses where there's a lot of abuse and there's a lot of like things being very, very cohesive. So you have these families where everybody is super on point. Yeah, I assume they're Stepford families because I don't understand how that works. But we see it where they're just all on point. And things in the house just seem to be like wherever they need them. And I'm like, did you put this here? No, no, I guess it just, someone must have left it there. And I damn well believe that that is an A port. I honestly believe that something has just like, boop, appeared because that family is all so on point that they need the whole house itself to work with them. And I really like in Encanto where they have like spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it.
I
In
haven't seen
Encanto,
it, but I'm gonna watch it. So I
in
don't care about spoilers. That's fine.
Okay, cool. In Encanto, the house itself is magical and it helps, like it moves and does things. And like
Uh,
I believe that like you can have that in your home where you're doing something and all of a sudden like you turn around and um, you don't remember putting a dish next to the sink and all of a sudden it's next to the sink. Or you're cleaning and you thought you dropped something but you didn't, it's back on the table, but you remember hearing it drop. And I think if your energy is prone enough to being very focused on a specific thing, very focused on I'm cleaning, everything needs to clean with me. I'm in the cleaning mode. I've seen like my mom would clean the house in a whirlwind in like an hour, and I swear to God she Mary Poppins some shit because there's no way that she cleaned that house without the house cleaning with her. But there was a physical energy with her when she did that stuff. But my mom also bent keys for no reason, like they would just stay in her pocket and they would bend. She could not wear a battery operated watch because it would
my
go out in a
mom,
heartbeat.
same, same.
Your
I
mom
was just
probably
gonna
could
tell
be
you that
your
she
mom could
couldn't wear
probably be a
anything.
physical medium.
So this is the thing. Our family, when I was a kid, was very dysfunctional. A lot of abuse, a lot of addiction. The entire family was just bad, like bad, bad. Everything was trauma, abuse,
Yeah.
addiction, awful, just bad. So now I have created a new family and distanced myself as much as I can and actually cut some people off completely. Um, and so with my husband and my sons, I have the more, um, I'm looking for something, boom, all this. I thought I was out of dark chocolate candy. Okay, that's my
Mm-hmm.
favorite little thing. All of a sudden, there's a piece of it right there that I didn't have,
Yep.
and it's there. It appears. So it's like both things you just described in two different. Now, I'm not a Stepford wife,
Me
but
either, honey. Don't worry.
I've worked hard to change the energy of my life and to raise my children and break the abuse addiction cycle that I came from.
But that strong healing energy and that intention is healing, and healing, spiritual healing is physical mediumship, not not mental mediumship. And so the fact that you've taken your whole life and turned the intention into it being a basis of healing, the intention is based under physical mediumship. So your world has essentially become, um, your energy physically moves things to make that happen because you are constantly always working on that. Like, or let's talk about
Oh,
this. Let's make sure that we work together. Let's make sure that we do that. So I'm not surprised that that physical activity is happening.
so can you help me with that?
I am
Make it
not a
happen.
physical medium. No, first I don't, no. I have rules. So
See, I don't
although
know a lot about physical mediumship and
look
like the
up.
ectoplasm stuff. I've heard about it, but I don't know. Like my teacher, I asked her, she believes it. She said she's seen something she
Uh,
could not even
I have.
explain. And I'm like, well, for science mind is
Yes.
like, I want evidence and proof. I want to see it
We
myself.
I always talk about him. Look up Scott Milligan. He's all over
I'm gonna,
YouTube. He
I'm gonna
is,
write it
yeah, it's Scott Scott. Milligan is
down.
Milligan. Yeah,
Okay.
and he is like the preeminent physical medium in England, and he
Okay.
is like everybody loves him. He's a wonderful guy. He is super, super nice. Him and his partner Darren are always traveling, doing stuff, and they were much more prevalent in traveling before the pandemic. But he does a lot of his. So his thing is he does deep, deep trance, where he does direct voice, but he does physical mediumship seances, and I've had the pleasure of attending three of them, because he came to New Orleans a couple of
Wow.
times, and he taught classes, and he was teaching trance, and they were teaching healing, and but he studied with like Uber mediums from England, and they were like abusive teachers. And so
Oh,
he's like, you'd come in, and he's like, my because he was training in trance, and he was training physical medium, because they from the age of like 16, 17. I'm not exactly sure. Don't quote me on that. But from young. And he said we'd go in, and my chair would be in the closet, and they'd have me sitting in this chair, and I'd have to sit there for um, like hours, for several hours. And I would not be able to move. And he's like, if I moved even just an inch, the clock was reset. And he's like, so once I got to the point where I could sit there for X amount of time without moving at all, I'd come in the next day, and my chair, the two back legs would be on legs, and I'd be pushed forward, and I'd have to sit there for the same amount of time without moving.
oh my God,
And
that's like torture.
I know.
That
And
sounds
he's like, so
terrible.
I go in there, and the
I'm too
right two
shifty.
legs, and I know, right? He's like, but the whole point was to get you comfortable in whatever, however you were sitting, so that way you could still throw your head back into the trance-like state. And he said, anytime I'd move, he'd tap me with this rod, and it's like wooden rod. He's like, he wouldn't hit me; he would just tap me. He's like, because he wanted there to be like this physical impulse of understanding that I had inadvertently moved.
Like
And
training
he's
a dog with a bell, that
like training
thing
a
they
monk, I assume. Yes, like
Maslow,
the
Maslow, something like
Pavlov's.
that.
Yeah,
Pavlov, I knew. I'm dyslexic in my old age.
I'm just
Pavlov,
I
that's right.
yeah, I get that. And so he talks about that all the time, and so he's a very strict teacher, but he's really, really nice in the sense that he believes in development. But he did. I've seen him do three seances. The first time he came, I didn't have the money to pay to go to a second one. The second time I did, and it's phenomenal. Like it starts off where there's toys and there's things in the middle of the room. He's very scientific in it, because you go in, you are not allowed to choose where you sit. Everyone has to pick a ticket, and everyone's randomly sat. And I'm fat, and I was claustrophobic. You are sat cheek to cheek with somebody. And the room is packed, and you are all around the room. His cabinet sits sort of towards the end where everybody can kind of see it. And four people are chosen at random to be checkers. And it's literally there's like a thing on the seat, and it's just a random number, and you pick out of a black bag. You don't even know what number you're getting. Four people are chosen at random, and they go and they tear the room apart, like absolutely tear it apart. Carrie, we're talking about a medium named Scott Milligan in England, and they tear the room apart, and then he is brought in with his partner, and he is searched from tip to toe and patted down, and he says, I allow you to do whatever you need to do to feel comfortable. He had one lady grope him, like absolutely, like TSA him. And he says, I was
With the
very,
back of
very
the hand.
I don't know. I don't remember that, but he said I got straight up. Yeah. And he said that he said I was very, very uncomfortable by that. I was very offended. He's like, but I had to allow it because spirit needs to be proven true.
Right. Right.
And he's like,
Yep.
so if that's what made them comfortable, he's like, that then so be it. But he then gets put into his cabinet. and then strapped with ties with
I've seen this. There's a show on Netflix, and it's a
mm-hmm,
girl they put in there, and I think they did the mediumship world a disservice on this show because they showed
yeah,
the craziest that stuff and not
I
the
agree.
regular stuff. So anyway,
100%
go on.
agree.
Yeah, they went
And so
too.
they, I know, it was like, don't scare people about this. There's
Yeah,
science behind this.
yeah.
And he's zip tied down to the just until it cuts off circulation. I mean, on it's super intense. Then, so they cut off the excess, and the person has to keep the excess. Like they have to hold on to it so they can prove that the cut marks match when they go to release him. They measure stuff to make sure they put like a silver sharpie on the black ties so that you can see that it didn't move any. Like
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff is done to verify that he's not doing anything. And we go into seance, we start doing songs, start doing stuff, and then everything's done in dark because of ectoplasm is light sensitive, um, white light sensitive, and we start singing and things like that. And there is a MP3 player with a stereo, and it turns on. Darren, his partner, who is holding one of the checker's hands at all times, has to announce whenever he moves. That's one of the science things. Like anytime he moves to prove that he's not getting up and doing something, he has to announce it. And then the checker has to announce if he moves without saying something. And so he's like, I'm moving to turn on the stereo. So he turns on the little stereo and it starts playing music and things like that. And the stereo cuts off. And the checker is like, he didn't move. Somebody turned
Oh,
it off. And so he turns on a red light and there's nobody up and walking around. And so he turns it off. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to go to move and turn it back on. And it cuts itself back on. And she's
wow.
like, he hasn't moved yet.
So
And
what
then
is that? Do you remember the name of that show? Some people are asking some questions.
I think it was, um,
I cannot remember the name of it, but they did different things, and there
there was
was a
different
couple of
mediumship things.
yeah.
Um, something
Can't
about,
remember the
I, all I remember is that it was dramatic. And it was not something I watched much of, and that's why I kind of forgot about it because I wasn't a huge fan of it. I liked the
there,
first one in the beginning where they talked about like the guy getting evidential mediumship done, but
oh,
I
and the
didn't care for the
lady
rest of
with
it.
the red cardinal when her mom died, and the red cardinal wouldn't leave her. Is that the same show you're talking
Yep.
about? I cannot remember the name of it either, but that some of that stuff was really cool. The thing that made me mad was the medium who did an evidential mediumship reading. It was a young lady, and
In the in her big throne chair.
yes, and she was at somebody's house. She went to somebody's house, and then she did the reading and got evidence, and then they looked up the obituary for this person, and some of the evidence was in there. But it's like, did she know the people's name ahead of time? Like
Oh,
most people who book readings with me, I don't they could be John Smith from anywhere, like, and some of them don't even
mm-hmm.
use their real names. I prefer it that way. I don't want to
Yeah.
know your real name. I don't want to have the opportunity for you to say, oh, you looked that up but thankfully I've never had any
I
clients be
um
jerks like that. But
I had I had something happen like that and it was hysterical. It was hilarious because and I don't mind it. I don't know who I'm really calling until the day of because I have my calendar and I only see their first name. And so, but Aiden, my partner, does all my scheduling, and I do all my scheduling through my website. So I have no idea until the day of. But I had a client. Spirit will call you out on shit, and I love this.
yep,
I had
yep.
a client, these two girls who had booked together, but they had booked like 3 hours apart because that's where the appointments were available. So I called one of them. Their loved one comes through, and he's talking to me, and he's like, "Yeah," he gives me all this information. She's like, "Oh my god, this is wonderful, great." So normally when I finish a reading, they're gone. They are toodle, have a good day, bye.
Yep.
A few hours goes by. I call the other person, do their mediumship reading, da 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 da. Their loved one comes through, talking, talking, talking. And all of a sudden, I see that other guy come back. And I'm like, that can't, well, maybe it's a
You right?
reference. Maybe it's a reference. Okay. And I'm like, and he's like, no, me and this guy are friends. And I went,
Uh,
are you and so friends? And she's like, yes. And I went, even bigger question because he's laughing at me right now. Are y'all in the same room right now? And they're
uh,
like, yes, we are. And I was like, thank you. They like, we didn't want to tell you. And I was like, you don't have to tell me, Spirit did. And
you go ahead.
it was hysterical.
It's
It was
great.
absolutely hysterical.
I had a gentleman, I mostly get female clients for whatever reason. I guess because I'm a woman. And
I get mostly females too.
I had a gentleman book a reading, and I was so excited to read for him. And he would his because I read for him on a live, and he was so excited about it. And so his energy was so excited before the reading, I couldn't get my TV to turn off, and I couldn't get the volume to turn down. I couldn't get it to. I tried the button on the TV, like clicking the back of it, holding it down,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't turn off. The volume wouldn't go down, and I'm thinking, what is
That's
going
hilarious.
on? I had to unplug it to get it to stop because you can't do a reading with the TV blasting,
Yeah.
obviously. So I get in the reading. He was expecting, because I didn't realize I had read for him on a live. I
Uh-huh.
didn't know until after. I get in the reading. His energy was so high. His expectations were so high. And he got a reading and he got evidence. But at first it was so erratic. But he had his current wife sitting on the other side of the camera. I don't know what was happening between them, but
Mm-hmm.
he wanted me to read for his past wife, who passed away very young unexpectedly. And so I think that trifecta was
Yeah.
making everything so crazy. And then I have thought about this reading probably every couple of days for the past few months because I feel like I didn't deliver what he expected, but I felt like it it was so energetically high that things couldn't come in clearly. And then he had the other person in the room that was kind of making it even more clogged up. Does that ever
I
happen to you?
yes, I am very particular about I don't mind I charge for more than one person during a reading because
So why?
never gonna fail that someone's gonna come through for them. So
Mm-hmm.
I do that more so that I am more so that the people will let me know that someone else is gonna be there because I find I always attribute the work that we do to tuning an old radio, and that it's that old dial, so you have to make sure it lands right on where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
That if I'm trying to compete with another radio and the signal is not strong enough, um, because I have interferences from two different things coming at the same time, I like to know which one I need to block out. So I start feeling someone coming in for a woman, and I'm talking to a guy. I know that that's not for you, and I can tune that out because she is not wanting to get a reading. She's just wanting to support. So I can be like, you don't come
Yeah.
in right now.
Boundaries.
Um, yeah. If I have time, I'll kind of be like, hey, so and so was lingering around while you were here, blah, blah, blah. But for the time, and if it's just one person getting a reading, I like to just know. And I find people, well, I was going to bring my mom in, but she didn't want a reading. She just wanted to hear who came through for me because I've been emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's fine. I normally charge for that, but if she's not going to get a reading, I won't.
Right.
And that way it brings up that conversation because I do find that I can always tell when there's somebody else in the room.
Yeah.
And it just feels like my energy's divided. And so I definitely
Yeah.
find it difficult to focus. Once I know that I'm picking that accurately, I then know how to sort of like move that out of the way.
I
But
have a
spirits themselves will fuck that up with readings. But
yeah.
were you gonna say?
Somebody on here is asking if we're doing readings right now. I mean, I think right now we're just chatting, but I mean, we could.
I'm getting to learn this beautiful person, and we might go into that. But I have a lot of questions about getting to know her and her work. But this chit chat is just us warming up to the
We're
nitty gritty
warming up.
questions. But I've had spirits though. Like that's my biggest problem is because I'm so affected by them. Is I had this. I'm gonna talk about it, y'all, but don't hate on me. Um, I had this old man spirit. This guy. I woke up. They're reading the client was this woman. I had her later in the day. I woke up that morning and I was severely backed up, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And my
I think
stomach
we
was
all know
hurting.
what that.
Yeah, my stomach was hurting. My back was hurting. I'm like, fuck. I tried. I was taking medicine throughout the day because I was like, I don't want to go into this reading uncomfortable. I'm not going to be able to think. So nothing happened. I mean, I was in pain. I get to the reading. I was like, I'm not going to cancel. I feel like I can do this. It's fine. Um, I get to the reading, and guy comes through, and
Was it
he
Elvis
had
Presley?
no, he had stomach cancer and hadn't pooped in like weeks
That's what happened to
before he
Elvis.
died. Oh, I
That's what
didn't know
happened
that.
to Elvis.
I thought he had a heart attack on the
He
can.
did. He did from being backed up from the narcotics, which makes you
Oh,
constipated. And they
oh
said he
yeah,
was
they do.
pushing so hard to go to the bathroom because he was on the toilet
Gotcha.
that he couldn't go, and it gave him a heart
Didn't
attack.
know that. Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. Good to know. But
You'll
no,
know
he had
everything.
died. He died from he had cancer, and so he passed from the cancer, but he didn't like poop for weeks before he died.
Yeah.
And I stopped. I said, "Excuse me, hold on." I went, "You son of a bitch," and I knew. And he's like, "I'm really sorry that I caused you to be like this, but this is a big part of what killed me. I got septic," and I was like, "Fuck." And
It's
I,
amazing
as
what they do to our bodies. Like I feel all kinds of crazy stuff in my
as
body.
soon as
All
the reading was over, as soon as the reading was over,
we're fine.
water done. Waterfall. Have a good day. So I know like I think she was probably I think his wife was probably messing with your TV. Like she
For
I
sure.
not I would have been like, first of all, was your wife an attention seeker? Like I'd have been like, because I've had they fuck with us so hard. I
Yeah.
would love it if he would have constipated my TV instead of me. So if Spirit ever wants to mess with one of my electronics, as long as I don't break it, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I get that.
so
I get a lot of electronic interference. Yesterday, when I was starting my class, my free
mm,
class I offer, there were 6 of us on there, and my Zoom just wouldn't load. I've used Zoom a million times. It just would not load. My Wi-Fi is primo, just wouldn't load.
yeah,
Nothing. And I'm like, and then we get on 5 minutes in, everybody's on there. My connection gets cut, just gone completely. And I'm like, oh my God, it's waiting for me. But then I went back on and it was fine. And somebody
this is
on here
why you.
said, I had no idea you could feel things physically also. Yes, one time I was doing a reading, I felt being shot in the chest and I saw the gun and
Mm-hmm,
that's not a common way to pass getting
mm-mm,
shot in the chest. So I'm like, here I go.
no.
Am I just making it up in my head? I said, would you understand him being shot in the chest? And she's like, yeah, that's how he died. And I'm like, and you can feel it. Yeah, we
Yeah.
feel stuff, but you can ask
I
the spirit to back off.
I had a loved one. I had a spirit who died from a stroke. My entire left side of my face went numb.
Mm-hmm.
I had a client. I had a spirit who was bulimic, and I became extremely violently nauseous. I had a client who had lung cancer. I stopped being able to breathe for a little while. I couldn't catch my breath. I've had heart attacks that cause physical pain. I've had funny thing. I will say this, and I love this because I'm very gender fluid. I have respect for all bodies because I think they're all miracles of creation,
Amen.
and evolution because I believe in that. And so, um,
Same.
I when I have a woman come through, and they had issues with their ovaries or their uterus, I will feel this space in my abdomen where a uterus and ovary should be, and
Well,
I
you know,
described it to a
we
friend of
were
mine.
all girls. All
Absolutely,
fetuses were female
absolutely,
when they were born. So you had that.
absolutely. And it's just interesting because I remember the first time it happened, I was like, What's that?
Oh,
And so I'll feel
ovary.
these things, and it's super interesting to me because um, I love having those experiences of things that I'd never be able to physically have without them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but yeah, it's so interesting because we are the we're that vessel that they can come in and really explain things to us. And sometimes the only way to do that is to get us to step into their experience. And it's a beautiful thing, but it definitely is draining. It is very physically exhausting.
I have a question
Um,
for you.
mhm.
I have a question. So I was taught by my teacher, who I am eternally grateful for. Kathy's on. Medium Kathy Barons is on here. She probably vouched for this.
I
She
have to
was
go
trained
follow
by
her.
the same teacher. Um, to put up boundaries to spirit and not let them constantly talk to you all the time. And then I saw a kind of a famous medium on a YouTube video getting interviewed for something. And I don't remember his name. But they were like, so do you just have spirits talking to you all the time? Don't you ever tell them to stop? And he's like, yeah, I have them talking to me all the time and I don't tell them to stop. I'm like, how exhausted must you be? I couldn't do that. I have other stuff, human things I do. I can't be giving a seminar about astrobiology on Mars and have spirits start talking to me. But I will tell you, I was in
Whew.
a meeting with my boss, who's a female, and this was at my day job, and she's talking to me, and her grandmother popped in over her shoulder and started talking to me. I'm like, couldn't hear anything my boss was telling me, just
Yep.
completely blanked out. And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot tell my boss at this science job
Yeah.
that her grandmother's talking to me. She will definitely fire me. So I'm like,
I
Grandma, it's not the time. I can't do it right now. I can't do it.
spirits. No, I always my mother will always pop in regardless of whether I want her to or not, and I'm fine with that. It doesn't happen so much anymore, but like I'll feel her nudge me from time to time. It used to happen a lot, and I was okay with that. But a lot of my intuition started at an early age due to trauma, as a way for me to
I think
feel,
mine did too.
yeah, as a way for me to feel safe and be able to tell when something bad was going to happen.
You were
And I tell people,
super hyper sensitive because you
mm-hmm,
never knew when it was coming. That's what happened to
exactly.
me. I
And I
never
tell
knew
people,
when the abuse was coming.
exactly. And I tell people, like, today, to this day, I think it's part of why I spiritually having spirits come through, not all the time, psychically all the time. And I tell Aiden, I tell everyone all the time, I said it's like at this point it'd be like trying to turn off my sight, because when I have days when I have like errands to run and bills to pay and things like that, I will kind of shut it down to the best of my ability, and I will
Yeah.
feel like I've handicapped myself. With no offense to anyone who's handicapped, but like I will feel like I am like cutting off a limb, and I become anxious. I become like I can't function. I start becoming
Uh,
I become very squirrely when I'm driving in traffic, and the grace that I have when I'm
mhm.
driving is gone. I become very just overwhelmed very easily because I don't know. I become antsy, and the minute I like let it back up, I feel fine. And I told Aiden, I said, I think it's because it was so trauma induced for so long as a child, because I was beaten up, I was harassed, it was coming from every direction, that it was this sense of being able to feel safe because I could feel when it was going to come. And now it's like I tell him, I'm like, I wake up and it's from the day I wake, from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to bed, there's this constant awareness of like things that are going on. But dead people know um, unless I'm like at a spiritual store, if I'm around a lot of people who are very open to it, spirit will be like, this person. I was like, I don't want to know shit. I'm like, no boundaries. Just because they're open to it, I did not get any absolute asking. I didn't anyone asking. I didn't get any permissions. I don't care if you know they're open to it. They did not express it to me. Have a good day. And so that does happen, but it's just. Um, I'm very different here, and there's a question that was asked that I want to answer, but um, I am a little different in this, and I think because of the fact that my intuition was always so widely open, I think it gave me a bit of a higher threshold to handle constantly because I'm open to hearing spirit all the time. And whenever they have messages for me, I'll take it. I'm not going to give it to people. I'm not going to talk to their loved ones at any time. But anytime I feel spirit nudging me to do something, I'm open to it. Um, so I don't feel like you shouldn't have a connection all the time. But if you feel like you were built, like your whole life was building you to be that open channel, um, then make sure that you're giving yourself some time where it's self care, making sure
Yeah.
you're spending those like Thursdays. Nobody can get a hold of me on Thursdays. I might
Yeah.
do a live once in a while, but I usually do it on Tuesdays or Sundays. But Thursday's my day where I don't let anyone bother me because that's just for me. I play video games, I watch
Yeah.
trash TV, I don't do anything that requires any kind of responsibility.
Yeah.
And so I have a question here that says, do you sugarcoat messages from spirits or what you get is what you get? I can very clearly say that what I get is what I get. However, I am not going to fuss at my clients. Like,
Right.
I have loved ones who come through, like, complaining about, like, something a loved one did to them, and I'm not going to sit there and just fuss at them. I'll be like, hey, they're talking about us when they're being fussy, they're expressing X, Y, and Z, and I will use verbatim, but I will sort of lower the tone
Yeah.
because they might like I might have a loved one who was very crass in life and very like it is what it is. I'm just who this is who I am. That's fine. I'll say what they're saying, but I'll express that they're just expressing who they were in life. I'll warm it up a bit, like this is not who they are anymore. But I treat myself just like I would as so anyone who's interpreting for someone who's like deaf to someone who speaks who doesn't speak sign language. I'm not going to change somebody else's voice. So I am
Yeah. So
very what you get is what you get.
when I see, because sometimes, because I guess because I have a lot of traumatic experiences, I have a catalog for trauma. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll see some pretty graphic things and I try to express them as gently as possible, not to traumatize my client, but still
Exactly.
let them know what I'm seeing in a gentler way. I'm not going to say, you know, it directly as I'm seeing it. But I have a question on here. Do either of you see them like almost physically around you? So have seen one full shadow figure. This was way before I was a medium, um, in my house, and it was so distinct that I thought it was my husband. And I went to chase him and tease him and scare him, and he was in the other part of the house, and there was nobody there. So, but I have asked Spirit not to show me things, not to show me my mother at the foot of my bed like my sister sees her, who is not a medium or at all, or spiritual at all. I would probably have a heart attack if I saw
Same.
my mother at the foot of my bed. So I have asked Spirit not to show me that. I have, however, asked my guides to start showing me things projected on my wall when I do readings, and I'm starting to get pictures. And I saw a full birth certificate one day. It was awesome. I can
That's
see
neat.
letters now and shapes like clouds or letters spelling things out. So they're helping me without scaring me, because I don't really want to see fully, I'm not ready to see fully
Same.
formed humans wandering around my house. It will really scare me.
So my spirit room is so we have a back room that goes down like two steps, two, three steps. Yeah, three. Where that's my spirit room and it's attached to an off like other room, laundry room. So, but you can see it through the kitchen door because it closes the back room off. I'll be in the living room and I'll see what I think is like someone walk through my spirit room, and I was like, y'all damn well know better. I do not want to see no physical people. Y'all better cut that shit out. I'm fat, so I'm prone to heart attack, and so, so I'm like, if y'all kill me, I swear to God. No, I saw one when I was 5. She uh, walked through my wall, stopped at the foot of my bed, continued on, and then I saw a shadow figure when I was a kid in our house. But I'll see them in my head projected outside of me. So like my eyes do not see anyone sitting on my couch, but I will see in my head someone sitting on the couch
That's
and
how
sort of
I can
like
see it.
Yeah, and like
That's
a
it's kind of
hologram,
like,
it'll sort of
yeah,
overlap itself. Yeah.
okay, good. I'm glad because I thought, is this normal? I
I
wanted to, can I mention something personal
Yeah,
to you, my
of course,
dear, my love?
of course. Duh.
Can you do me a favor from
Yeah.
a mother's point of view?
Uh-huh.
Please talk kindly to yourself.
Oh, well, no, I do. I am no. Okay, so this is a big thing with me.
I
I'm
just,
very factual. I am fat. I am literally fat, and I am prone to heart attacks. I'm just. This is the thing because like one of my things is trying to destigmatize the idea of that like, um, being called fat is not a bad thing. I don't like being called big. I'm fat. But being so horribly bullied growing up, I appreciate your concern. I will take that into consideration. Yes. But this is a big thing in the plus size community where um, people will say, "Oh, you're not fat." I'm like, yeah. And it's done in the sense of like trying to care about our emotions, like not trying to be mean. Because being bullying as a kid, I'm like, oh, you're so fat. It is this idea of trying to like take back that idea of like factually and logically, yes, I am fat. I don't like the word morbidly obese. I don't like the idea of being morbid attached to that. The idea of like negativity. And I don't like when someone will say, "Oh, um, you're not fat. You're beautiful." I know I'm beautiful. I'm also fat. like, like, so I appreciate it, and I will take that into consideration if I feel myself talking bad about myself in a way that I consider bad. But I will not say that again while we're on live.
well, it doesn't
Um,
affect me. I want you to manifest your, because I know you've been going to the gym and working hard to make yourself
yes,
healthy and get your heart
fucking
healthy.
Jim.
And I want you to manifest that part and
I
not,
do.
I did
I appreciate
I
that.
just I just did a video about, because I have some relatives who are constantly, I'm poor, I have no money, I don't have anything. And guess what? They're poor, they
Fully
have
get
no
that.
money, they don't have anything. Because that's what they say
Fully
all
get
the
that.
time, instead of saying, I'm gonna work harder to achieve
Yeah.
more or get a second
I
job, whatever.
absolutely
I
agree with
always
that.
have at least two jobs. I always have at least
I
two jobs.
learned in manifestation, thanks to a lot of like my partner, like sitting there and being like, "You gotta fucking say something different." In our manifestation, we would talk about how like I'm gonna have this. It's coming, and he was like, "No, we have it. It's not coming. We have it."
Yes.
And I was like, "Fine," and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I absolutely acknowledge that. I do say, and I'm very happy to say, I am healthy and I am losing weight.
Good.
So I'll say that for you. I had a question about someone because this is something that I get all the time. So, if people are cremated, do they cross over and look exactly like everyone else? Absolutely. The body
Yes.
has nothing to do with the way the spirit looks like. People can cross. My mom crossed over at 64, and she comes back looking like she's 36. So if that bitch can have a spiritual facelift, her body has nothing to do with it, and she was cremated. So
Yeah, I did a question on TikTok the other day. Would you rather be buried or cremated? Because my husband and I are 50 and 51. I'm 9 months older than him, and he never lets me forget it. And it's something we talk about. You get older, anything could happen at any time,
yeah,
and we've lived in so many different places around the country. We don't want to be buried in one place. First of all, I am extremely claustrophobic, and I
oh okay.
can't even. My mother used to tell me this horror story. I don't know if it's true, that her aunt was buried alive, and when they dug her up, there was scratches and fingernails on the top of the coffin. I'm like, why did you tell me that? I was like
Why would
5
you
years
tell
old.
children that?
She was an alcoholic. Who knows? I don't know. So I've been scared to be buried ever since then.
Yeah.
And so my husband and I both decided on cremation, just, for all the reasons that we don't want to force our kids to go to wherever to go visit our grave, even though we're not really going to be there. But yeah, it doesn't matter how you pass. And also when people unalive themselves,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't affect them crossing
It
over.
doesn't. It doesn't
Um,
at all. And yes, so like someone said, everyone is equal in spirit. So all spirits are equal when they are in heaven. Yes. So Um, yeah, everything is equal. There is no hell. There's no sense of like judgment. There's no purgatory. There's no line to get judged. You wake up and you're just dead, and so you're alive. And that's the thing about it, that what I've loved about working with Scott, because he does a lot. Because when he does his seances, he'll take time to let his controls, his guides, come through and answer questions about the spirit world. And so everyone's always like, "What's it like?" And they're like, "It's whatever you want it to be on the other side." He's like, "Yet at the same time, you're aware that you're in spirit, but you feel alive." He's like, "It feels like living." So everything there is, I mean, and you know what? This is the perfect segue, because scientists. Let's talk about science here. Consciousness is energy, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
consciousness in our physical body, which is just atoms moving at a very slow vibrational rate. There's no physical actual matter. Everything in existence is just a vibration, right?
So one atom, think about, because I love football.
Okay.
So I'm going to use you know what a football stadium is.
Yes, I do.
One atom, if the nucleus was the size of a head of a pin on the 50-yard line, that's the
Okay.
nucleus.
Okay.
The electron, which is the next thing, would be in the parking lot. Everything
What?
in between, yes, 100% accurate analogy. Yes. Everything in between there is empty space. So we are almost entirely made of empty space.
Emptiness.
If
That is
you took
phenomenal.
all of the protons, neutrons, and electrons in our body, it'd be about a tablespoon.
What?
Yes. If you squished it
That's
all
a.
down.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
So those electrons are zooming around the nucleus. That's what gives us our shape. That's what
That
gives us our
is so
solidity.
cool.
Yeah.
I had worked with a medium, Victor Voganitz, who is from Florida, who did table tipping. He has since passed. Um, he did this lecture before the first table tipping class I took with him, where he had read this book about the spiritualist who had talked about how he, to him, what he experienced in spiritualism was that the spirit world did not exist above, below, or without. It existed in the space between atoms. And
I
I
can
was
get down
like,
with that.
I love that, because
Yeah.
if we see spirit as just sort of like the negative to our processed photograph, I'm like, they're two halves of the same coin.
So
And
go ahead.
I'm
I'm
loving
just
that,
so
that you.
excited. I'm just so excited to talk about
I
it.
know. I just love that. And that's why I'm saying. So a long story way of saying thank you for saying that, because I never realized how much space was between atoms.
Yeah. That's how much. That's 100% accurate. So I just did a video, I think, earlier today about the spirit world overlapping us. So that's just like what you said. The spirit world's in between the parts of the empty parts of the atom.
Yeah.
We have we only see this tiny little portion of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yes, I think I saw that video.
So, and then the sound, same thing with sound. We only hear a tiny little part of the sound spectrum. There's
Mm-hmm.
a whole bunch of, now we have equipment that can pick up the other stuff,
Yeah.
but our mind can also pick up the other stuff. That's how we're mediums, because
Mm-hmm.
and sweet Kathy, who has become my moderator on here, she's such a sweetheart, taking that over. I don't know how to get a moderator, so thank you, Kathy. We can
I'll show you how to set that up one day.
okay, we can pick up all those other frequencies, and the spirit world is just overlapping us. It's here, it's right here, it's all around us, just like other dimensions of the scientists say there's probably at least 11 or 12 other dimensions. Well, there could be a dinosaur running through your living room and you just couldn't see it, you wouldn't notice it.
So that's one of the things that's big with me, because there was a show on TLC called Mind Games, and they would talk about
I
how
heard
our.
that. I think I watched
I
an episode or two
love
a
that
while
show.
ago. Is that from a while
Yes,
ago?
years ago.
If somebody wants to know
And
about demons, don't let me forget.
wants to know
Errol
about
M.
what?
Taylor, demons. So we'll go to that next.
Okay.
We'll get.
Yeah. So in mind games, he would play games on our brain on how it does all this stuff that we are not aware of. So he that classic game of where you have you have people playing basketball and you have like 15 people watching them, and while the basketball game is going on, you have somebody in a chicken costume walk behind the game, and he asked all these people, okay, what did you notice? And then like they're like, oh well, he double dribbled and they knocked him down, and they're mentioning the whole game, and he's like, did you notice the giant yellow chicken? And they were like, what yellow chicken? And they rewind the video, and there's a huge guy in a chicken costume walking in front of everyone, and they're like, I didn't see it. And then one person is in the back going, I saw something, but I couldn't. I got really focused on the game, and so he says your brain could not make sense of why there'd be a chicken just casually strolling
Mm-hmm.
across during the basketball game. So it deleted it from your memory. It just automatically removed it.
You know,
And
my husband got robbed one time. He was working at a company that dealt with a lot of cash, and he got robbed. And so the police came, and
mhm,
he gave an eyewitness account of this person, exactly what they looked like. Then he had to go identify him at the jail or wherever. I don't know, wherever they do that. He
mhm,
identified him. Just so happens it was not the person, and he was like 2 feet from him. Your memory, just like what you're saying, it is eyewitnessed, and he
yep,
was literally identified him,
there,
and it was a person who looked similar, but it was not the person. And so
yeah.
obviously they let him go because it wasn't the right
That
person.
was
Then
one
they
of the
found
games
the
they
right
did.
person. Yeah. And so he was so upset because he felt like he could have put someone in jail that was completely innocent. Because your
Yep,
mind,
that was
eyewitness
one of the games they
testimony
did.
is skewed, very skewed.
Yep, they did that as one of the games. A lot of the discussion was about how your brain works in ways that we are not understanding, because they said you physically. He's like, we know that you physically had to have seen it because we know that you're subconscious and that the mind is always constantly filtering information. He's like, but we don't know how it just deletes it. Like, why does it not process it through your conscious mind? And that it
Interesting.
comes from a lot of the barriers. He's just talking about, we think it's from a lot of the barriers. Now, I'm not a scientist here. I'm just going off of what they said. But he said they think it's from the base of your conscious mind is set up growing up to be open to certain things or not. And he's like, if you have a more open, more artistic mind, you might notice the chicken because
Uh,
you're more prone to being open to random things in your life. And he's like, but if you're more structured, you may you're more likely not to see random stuff. And it made me think, how many spirits do we see on a regular basis
that we
that our
don't even.
brain just deletes? How many, like, it makes me think, like, so you go back to the movie Signs with Mel Gibson
I watched
with
it
the
once,
aliens.
terrified me and my kids, and never
Same.
watched it.
I watched it again, but it terrified. Every time I watch it, it still creeps me out. So in the movie, they're able to camouflage themselves, and so, but in the way that they do the movie, it's almost like the people who are trying to hunt the people just can't see them. Like their brain just deletes it, and I'm like, there could be aliens walking. There could be an alien in
Yeah,
my house right now, looking at me like I'm a
yeah,
fucking idiot,
and
and just be
yeah.
like, why you don't see me? And I'm like, and it's just like, this is so strange, this stupid little brain. Um, so when I think about spiritualism and I think about mediumship, I realize I'm like, growing up, my mom telling me that it was perfectly normal, that spirits happen every single day, that this is not something special,
Yeah.
made my brain more comfortable with experiencing these things.
Oh, I want to say a shout out to psychic medium Pam Sears, who's popping on here saying she's going back and forth between us. Hi, sweetie, I love you.
Hi, Pam.
Um, and now we have to talk about demons. What do you think about demons? I'll tell you what I think while you gather your thoughts.
So
I don't believe in demons.
I don't. I
I don't
really
believe
don't.
in demons, and I don't think hell is real
No.
at all. because I know it's a misinterpretation of the Bible that organized religions have used as a control mechanism to scare people into doing what they want them to do, regardless of their interpretation of the Bible,
Yeah.
which is mostly wrong.
Right. A lot of my education was spent on cultural anthropology and studying religions and studying ancient
Ooh.
civilizations.
Oh
I
my
went to
God.
school for art history.
That's a whole new live we got to do, because I love that's right up my.
I
Have you watched The Gift on Netflix? It's about Gobekli Tepe, and
No, but
you
I'm
got to
gonna.
watch it.
I will do.
It's 3 seasons. It's like a docudrama, sort
Okay,
of.
totally gonna do that.
It's so good. It's based in Turkey. It's dubbed over, but I freaking loved it.
Okay,
It's
I'll watch
three
that.
seasons, very different. They go into different timelines. It's
Okay,
amazing.
I'll watch
The
that.
Gift.
So I grew up studying mythologies from different religions when I was a child. I would not read anything, but I would read mythologies, and I understood that they were stories. I understood that they were allegories, but I understood they were also religions. And people don't like to say that nowadays. That Greek mythology back then was not mythology; it was religion. It was the
Mm-hmm.
religion. And so,
The gods were real.
absolutely. And to
Yep.
this day, there are people in the world who still believe in these people. And I work for an organization here called Pagan Pride Day. Like I help organize cultural events. And so, but so I studied this growing up, and it was a huge fan because I was looking at like these people built huge like the Parthenon and the Acropolis and all these beautiful things to their deities. I mean, some of the like the statue of Brahma in India is a huge statue. I mean, the Buddha that's like 500 feet tall. Like, I mean, these are stunning things that history provides to us to show that people believed in something. So
And
I
they
was very
took
interested in
all
that as
that
a
time
kid.
and effort, all that time and effort and resources. It was
Yep.
meaningful for a reason.
Exactly. And so I was always fascinated by that in kid. And I also got into studying like ancient cultures and the shamanistic ways of people. And I understand that there are cultures that are not Christian that predate Christianity that believe in demons. But I also have to acknowledge that part of me thinks that that is a personification of negative energy. You know, I there was a story of that man. I'm terrible with names, so I want you to know that as much as I can tell a
I
story in a
am too.
heartbeat, names escape me. But there was
Thing.
this African shaman who had come to the United States he'd studied psychology and he was becoming a psychiatrist to study the mind and things like that, but he was a shaman. And he came to the States and he ended up doing residency in a mental health hospital. And there was this young boy who was like 16 years old and he was schizophrenic. And he was talking with him one day and he's like, this kid's not schizophrenic, he's afflicted. And so he contacted the parents and he's like, I'd like to bring him home and train him to be a shaman. He's like, because he's not schizophrenic, he's afflicted by spirits. And he's like, and I'd like to train him to deal with that. And this is not condoning any kind of medical advice. This is not talking that schizophrenia isn't real. This is
Correct.
not something like that. But he said,
Yes.
he's like, I believe in that. He's like, but I don't think this is his issue. So he trained him as a shaman, and after 1 year, it was gone. And his parents were like, "Oh my God, we have my son back!" And it was in the news some years ago. And I know that these ancient religions hold merit. I don't think that they're wrong, but I think back then when a person who was spiritually gifted and connected would see a malicious energy around someone, I don't know what else they knew to call it, and it became a demon. And so they would exercise that evil into masks or objects and things like that. And I think that's where that idea of that demon work came from, which in the ancient cultures was based on healing an affliction that needed to be removed. Not the demon wasn't haunting or possessing someone to cause cruel problems. It was a natural thing that you needed to have alleviated. And today, I
I
think the Christian church took demons and made it out to be, well, we're going to use them as the guards of hell to make you scared in order to come running to the church. And
yes.
I don't believe in demons at all. I believe in negative energy,
I
and I
don't
do
either.
believe that that can be alleviated through healing work and stuff like that. But I think that was all just the idea of negative energy. And when I go to a
I
house
have a
or somewhere,
person on. Oh, sorry. I have a
you're fine.
person on here who says, I'm diagnosed, but I know it's spirit. And the same thing happened to me yesterday. I was doing a reading for a woman whose mother came through. And all morning, it was my first reading. All morning, I had so much anxiety. I was running around the house like a maniac, doing, da, 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 da. And it was her mother coming in. And her mother had psychic and mediumship abilities, but she wasn't trained. And that gave her all this anxiety.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the same problem my mother had. She had her own traumatic background. I won't go into it, but she had horrible social anxiety. She had horrible, personality disorders, and that's why she drank, to
Mm-hmm.
quiet quiet it down, because she
Yep.
wasn't on any kind of depression medicine or anxiety medicine or anything. I don't even know if that existed back then. I'm sure something did, but she wasn't on anything. So she just drank. And, people said all kinds of horrible things about her. And so this lady um, is saying, I'm diagnosed, but I know it's spirit. Yeah, I think that happens. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, same.
So
Not a doctor.
definitely if you get training, you can see, oh, is this alleviating my anxiety and depression? If it's
And I want
not,
to I want to clarify, like, I don't see anything wrong with having mental disorders. Like, I don't think
me
anyone's
neither.
less than because they're schizophrenic. I mean, it's an affliction. Like, if you have asthma, like, you can't help it. It's
Yeah,
not your choice, and it doesn't make you a bad
yeah,
person. So I'm not someone who's like, oh, if you have schizophrenia, like, do follow doctors. And I'm not saying that you can't be schizophrenic and be a medium. And I'm not saying
yeah.
that there's nothing saying that you can't. I, one of my classmates in college, she was studying psychology, and her emphasis was on schizophrenia. And she studied this artist who made these amazing paintings in their schizophrenia because their schizophrenia made them see things in very different ways, and they would paint on their different emotional moods. And I was like, you do realize there's probably just a wiring in their brain that allows them to channel this beautiful energy
Hmm.
because their brain has a lack of filters. And she didn't believe that, and it's fine. But there's so like I honestly believe that maybe it could. I don't want to say it could alleviate, but do I think there definitely is a connection there? Yes, in my spiritual opinion, non-medical.
I do
Don't.
too.
Yeah,
I have
that gives me such
Pam
anxiety.
Sears is asking a question. She said, I feel ghosts are fragments left behind. What are our thoughts on ghosts?
I think ghosts are residual energy that is intense. And I also believe that ghosts can also be so in the paranormal investigations that I've done, when I see the echoes, what I call echoes, which is the stuff that's just residual, that's constantly playing over and over and over again, I think that's an echo of energy, where that energy has been very intensely living in that situation before they died and left a recording of them in that space.
It's
Intelligent
just it's
hauntings,
just remnant
yes,
of the energy. I agree with
exactly.
that. I agree with
It's
that.
like a carbon copy.
Yeah, and it just
I
sticks there.
think, yes, I think intelligent hauntings is spirit meeting us where we understand them.
Mm.
If
See, I
you
don't
go
know a
into a
lot
haunting,
about ghosts. I don't know. I don't have any expertise on ghosts at all. So I don't have a lot of information. I think that there's definitely energies that come and go. Whether you want to define it as ghosts, I don't know. I don't think the
I
labels really matter, but there's
same,
definitely spirits coming
yeah.
around
I
for sure.
I had this conversation with Megan because she's a big paranormal investigator and so was I. And when we go into like when I go into a house and it's something that's playing over and over and over again, there's a sense of just like watching a pre-recorded movie. And when I go in somewhere and I feel someone interacting with me, there's a consciousness there. And I told
Hmm.
her, I said, well, I don't believe in hauntings. I don't believe spirit is haunting actively a building. And she's like, I agree. And I was like, do you think it could just be them, actually conscious spirits who have crossed over, choosing to meet us where our consciousness will allow?
And
Because if
whether
we
it's
believe in
negative or
hauntings,
positive,
it's up to
and
us.
that's kind of the next question. The next question I have is, can you have spirit guides that are actually demons or negative energy? I think that's a projection of what's inside you.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
think if I've said this to so many people who say, I had a medium tell me I had a negative spirit attached to me. I had a medium tell me something negative. It's like, that's their projection because they haven't done their shadow work. You can't be a medium if you haven't dealt with your own trauma and not
Yep.
project your trauma on someone else. You have to do that deep work. Now, everybody doesn't. I have stuff still that is not completely finished that I need to work on, but a
Mm-hmm.
huge part of it I have worked on. And I know better than to project that
Yeah.
onto a client. And I think a lot of people do that,
I agree.
that aren't trained
Um,
well and haven't done their work.
exactly. Like it's. I remember I was doing a circle and this young man stood up and he's like, "Oh, I have this man. He hasn't crossed over. He's handed it off," and the leader of the circle got up and was like, "We don't know. That is
I'm
a
listening. I'll
projection.
be right back. I'm
You're
listening. I'll
fine.
be right back.
You're fine." I was like, the leader was like, "That's a projection. Like they're not actually not crossed over. You are assuming that because they're coming in so strongly and so intensely that they must not be crossed over." And that's just not accurate. Now, I will say to Nolan Nixie, I live in New Orleans. I am from Louisiana, born and raised from Lafayette, the heart of Cajun territory. I do believe that we have ghosts, but I do not believe that they are ghosts. I believe that they are echoes of the people who've walked these streets because let's face it, New Orleans is a city that has an energy unlike any other. Like I've talked to people about this from all over the world. There is no other place in the world like New Orleans, and it's because it's so heavily spiritually based. And I don't mean like just spiritual. I mean like occult based. Like it's that idea of there being raw energy in this town, in this city, that is spiritual. I think provides a battery for the energy of those who've walked this ground before us to hang out. And I do believe it still echoes, but I do believe that there are people who have crossed over into spirit. We all cross. I agree, Pam. We all cross over. Who I believe that like people who've crossed over who loved New Orleans as much as they did. I know. Let me make this very clear. When I die, I'm coming back to New Orleans. I'm gonna hang out here in New Orleans because I do believe that people can cross over and visit all they want. I mean, if I when I die, if I don't get to just go wherever and however I want because I didn't get to travel freely when I was alive, I'll be mad. But so yeah, I that difference is simply just I think spirit meeting us where we can see them, where we can acknowledge them, and a large part of our acknowledgement is them as ghosts. And I've met a lot of paranormal investigators who started out as trying to debunk spirit and then became semi believers and then became believers. And that is the most spiritual thing I can think of. Why spirit would want to show up as a ghost to get them more and more and more open minded to realize, oh, they're okay, they're crossed over, they're not ghosts, they're not like stuck here. Okay, cool. I could see that. So that's kind of
I,
my belief.
the person who asked about the spirit guide demon says, wow, okay, it's Jessica Casey. I have been wanting to know my spirit guides, but someone told me I couldn't as it's negative. Well, that's a crock of crap. That's not true.
My
Nobody has
mom was my mom was negative in life, but just she's my spirit guide. She's not negative now.
Yeah,
That was a
I'm
joke.
glad to say that I'm glad you said your mom's your spirit guide because,
Hmm.
and I've done videos on this too. Who people are like, "Oh, your mom can't be your spirit guide. Your loved one." Well, that's BS. Anybody can guide you. We love
Hmm.
labels. We want to put it in a box and put it on the shelf. Spirit guides are this. Our loved ones are
Hmm.
this. A ghost is this. Is there's crossover. We are so our knowledge is so limited compared to what
Oh
we
yeah.
have in the universe
Hmm.
for us dumb ignorant humans who
Amen.
know so little to label everything exactly the way it's supposed to be, who are you to say what we think about what's a spirit guide and is our mom a guide? Because I feel like my mom has guided me from the day she died. Yeah. 1986 she died. You know, wow. That's a long, probably before you were born, Sean.
The year before I was born.
So she's been ever since. So to call her my spirit guide, so it's okay. She could be my spirit guide. I have a main guide who's different from her and who is not a person I've ever met, but that doesn't mean she can't be a guide.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's
my
just
mom, when she was dying, when she was sick, one of my mentor was like, Sean, I would suggest that you start building a relationship with her for spirit now. So we came up with symbols that she could give me. There's one I don't talk about, and there's one that I do talk about. And one of them is the fact that I can always feel her in the kitchen, and because my mom was a wonderful cook. And so my mother and I started building up a lot of these symbols for her when she crossed over. And I told her that I really wanted her to work with me because my mother was the only person in life that I ever thought loved me at all, and my entire life. And so because I was bullied by my father, my brother, all my classmates, teachers, adults, like it was everywhere. And so she was just one person that I trusted explicitly. And my mother was also extremely intelligent. And so when her and I would talk about things, it was always very easy. And I was like, if there's anybody that I'm going to be able to hear clearly in spirit, it's going to be my mother. So we were like, when you die, you're going to be my guide, suck it up, And so a lot of my help in the beginning came from her it was about a year, because I had to go through that healing process of dealing with that grief that when she'd start coming in right after she died, I'd lose my ever-loving mind. And then she stepped back for about 6 to 8 months and never visited. And then the first time I really remembered her doing it, when I stopped thinking about it, was I could hear the oven kick on. And I could feel the warmth of the oven being on. And I was like, cried, but I was okay. And so after that, when I'd be doing a reading and the loved one would come through, she would help translate stuff for me. She'd be like, no, they're trying to say this. Use this word, not that word. She would... my mother was a master gardener. She had studied botany as an extra in college. And so she knew all the Latin names and all that stuff. So when someone was trying to get a message across to me, she would show me flowers. And she'd show me plants and tell me their meanings and things like that. And it helped so much. And so I tell people to this day, I'm like, if there's a loved one, like my partner's grandmother is probably not long for this world. And I'm like, build that relationship with her now. And it'll be so much easier for her to come through to you after she passes. And so I tell everyone to do that. There's nothing... It also destigmatizes death. Like when you heal that, being able to talk to them about it now, when they pass, you're like, oh, it's okay. They're going to be in spirit. That helped a lot in the healing process. If I hadn't had that, I probably would have needed a whole nother year of therapy.
So I get that completely. And this person is asking, how did you find your spirit guides? I'm struggling. So for me, because I'm and have this science career, I didn't believe spirit guides were real when I started mediumship. I thought it was a bunch of crap. And so through my teacher and blah, 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 I started sitting in the power. So if somebody's looking for how to find your spirit guide, you can go on YouTube. There's a million free videos. Type in sitting in the power for spirit guides. Find one you like. Basically, it's a meditation. There's all different kinds. The one I used to find my spirit guide was from my teacher, Danielle, the Happy Medium. And she took me out to the beach in my mind and the waves. And it was a guided meditation because I need guidance. And she's like, and then there's a chair. Look at the chair. Who's sitting in the chair? And then there was my spirit guide. And that's how I found my spirit guide. Now, before that, I was just like all over the place up here because I didn't have any training. But
Hmm.
that's how I found my spirit guide, my
That's
actual
cool.
main guide. I know where my mom is.
Yeah.
I didn't have to find her. So, how did you
Yeah.
find do you have other guys besides your mother?
I how do I tell this? So I grew up pagan. So I studied Greek mythology and became very close to the
Mhm.
Greek gods. And a lot of my religious and spiritual background started me studying Greek mysticism. And I work with Athena and Hermes because in our
That
tradition,
I want to know more. I want us to just talk offline and just talk about that because I
absolutely.
love it.
I started studying mysticism around 14, 15, right when I started studying tarot, because I found a lot of belief in the more natural work of spirituality, herbs, things like that. And
Hmm.
I'm sharing this because I'm all about being open. I still practice this to this day, but it's very personal. It's not something I don't, it's just for me. Like if I have close personal friends who need healing work done, I'll make teas and bath salts and things like that for them. I consider myself like Sandra Bullock from Practical Magic, but I don't
Oh
sell my
my God.
stuff.
I love that movie. And
I know
I
it's my
want
favorite movie.
to go down and have a little herb store
Yes.
so bad.
And so, but I started because I liked the natural thing. I believed the energy of the earth and nature and things like that. And but I was in a Greek tradition because that growing up, I was drawn to that. I realized it was past life stuff. And the tradition I was in, where you didn't choose who worked with you, you went through an oracle work where the priest and the priestess would divine who was working with you. And the two deities I was always obsessed with were Hermes and Athena, and it got divined that those are the people who worked with me, and I was like, oh my god, that's why I was so close to them. And growing up, I was always such a wordsmith. The speaking with confidence and speaking intelligently was always a big thing because my mother was a grammar obsessed person,
Oh wow.
and oh yeah, and so so when I got both of them, I did a lot of research into them, and come to find out, like in the Greek pantheon, they both were the only two who shared the epithet logios, which was speaker, and they
Wow.
both were like the wordsmith, and they both dealt with communication and wise words and things like that. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. So I worked with them to this day. I have a huge altar setup of full of like deity uh, communication and wise words and things like that. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. So I worked with them to this day. I have a huge altar setup of full of like deity statues and stuff that I've collected. And I don't work in a deity way now. I consider myself an omniist. I just believe in spirit and that they're all sort of projections of a spirit of the spirit world. But
I
I worked,
feel
yeah,
very similarly to that. Like
and I
all
worked
religions
with them.
have a little piece, whether it was pagan or
Yes,
Christian, whatever, a little piece
absolutely,
of information.
absolutely. And I think they were just projections of the spirit world connecting in ways that they could.
Yeah.
And now I'm not taking away from cultures and their belief systems. I want to make that very clear. Like I don't, I'm not saying that my belief is right over their belief. That's just what I believe. And so, but I worked with them for well over like 10 years. And so when I started mediumship and whatnot, I worked with Athena very closely because she was about being the wise counselor. And that's who I already was when I was doing tarot readings. And I always kind of felt her helping me guide people. Um, I had had other spiritual experiences with spiritual leaders that I couldn't explain, and I've always had a hard time discussing them because I am, albeit a very spiritual person, I'm a very logical person too, and I don't like stepping on toes. I don't like being sensationalized. I don't like being over the top. But I
Mm-hmm.
had experiences that I couldn't explain, and um, I I worked with Mother Mary for quite a while, or my idea of who I believe was Mother Mary for a while,
Mm-hmm.
because I was reading for a friend of mine who's a traiteur, which is a Cajun faith healer,
Okay.
and she's this 65-year-old crazy Cajun woman named Becca, and she's one of my favorite people in the world. and she is so sweet, but she is a Cajun faith healer. And I was doing a reading for her, and she would trade like Cajun knowledge, like she was old, like traditional Cajun woman, so she would teach me things and things like that. And I would trade readings. And so I was in her house one day, and I'm doing this reading for her, and I look over and I see a woman sitting on her couch, and she's in this white dress with a blue shawl, and she looked like she was like 20, and she had long brown hair and a darker complexion. And I was like, "Is this her
Mm.
daughter? Is this Dana? Is this her daughter who has passed?" And I was like, "No, it's not." And I hear very clearly in my head, "You know who I am." And I'm like,
Mother
"No,
Mary.
no, no, no." I was like, "No, no, 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 no. We're not doing this." So I said, so I was like, I paused back for a minute. I was like, back, I need a minute. So I start talking to this person, and I'm like, I know who you are, but there's no way this is who you are. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, no, no, I'm not Christian. Why are you talking to me? And she's like, I wasn't Christian either. And I was like, damn it. Like, there was always this, and because it was I grew up very traumatized by Christianity. And so being gay, being a
Yeah.
weirdo, and knowing things,
Yeah.
and so I grew up in this very, very Catholic town. So it was very abusive. And so I was the last person I ever expected to feel and see. And I was like, okay, well, you must be here for Becca. What do you want? And she's like, well, you tell her X, Y, and Z. She gave me all this stuff for her. And Becca validated that this was stuff that she did when she was a child in connection to Mother Mary. And I was like, okay. So I started working with her lightly for a while. And when I first moved to New Orleans, I got invited to a gallery on across the lake, and I was driving and I see her pop up in my car, and I was like, "What do you want?" And she's like, when you get there, you're gonna be asked to work." And I went, "Fuck no." Pardon my French. I went, "Fuck no." I
Doesn't
was like,
bother me.
"No, I'm off today." I was like, "No, no, I paid my $20 to go to this thing. I'm not working." And she's like, "I'm telling you, you're gonna work." And I was like, "Damn it." So I get there, I get introduced to the lady who owns the place. The lady's like, "Oh my God, you're a medium. I've heard about you. I've heard you were wonderful." And I was like, no, thank you." I knew I was like, "No, thank you." So the show starts. The Reverend, who's a spiritualist medium, Reverend was leading the thing. She's like, "Okay, who wants to go first?" The lady who owned the place was like, "Sean will go."
Wow.
And I went, in my head looked at her and I went, "You bitch." And I was like, she's like, "I told you." She's like, I wanted you to be prepared." And I got up and ended up getting some of the most beautiful readings I had in my life because I had just started doing demonstrations. And the lady who owned the place got up. We worked together. It was beautiful. And I started having these experiences with this guide who it was very hard to discuss. Like, am I talking to Mother Mary? Because I'm like, I have to acknowledge that if she actually existed, then she would be a spirit in spirit. So
Yeah.
a large portion of what I do is healing, compassion, all these things. That's what she was all about. I'm like, okay, I'm okay. Um, so I worked with her for a while. I haven't worked with her in a while since. Another person I have a lot of reverence for is Marie Laveau because she was a big protector of the people of New Orleans. Um, she was a nurse. She was a healer. She was a practitioner, a voodoo priestess. But like, I don't practice voodoo, and I don't honor her as a practitioner would. That is not something that I would ever do. But I honor her as a person who led people to be strong. And so because I had come to New Orleans, I did a ring for a woman, and I could have sworn I saw her show up about doing some work, like trying to help this woman who's being abused, and
Mm.
she was a big proponent about helping abused women. And
Mm.
so I was like, okay. And so I kind of had this thing that whenever somebody else's system interacts with me to give them that message, I've kind of honored that person because I want to leave that door open if they want to come through for anyone else. So I've never really had like any one centered guide other than my mom for a long period of time. But they have had a lot of my guides have been spirits who want me to understand people's cultures. So that way when I work with them, I'm open to these things.
Yeah.
And it's been uncomfortable, but yeah, that's who my guides have tended to be.
I'm very lucky because I live in an area where there are many cultures, Northern California, and
Hmm.
everybody. is welcome and loved and accepted, for the most part. Because I grew up in the city of San Francisco, so
Oh wow.
yeah, it was best part of my life in the 90s. Um, anyway, so it helps my catalog when I'm doing readings. I have a question about guides here. What about,
Hmm.
and I have to go in a few minutes because I'm hungry.
Yeah.
What about aliens as guides? That's interesting because I believe in aliens. I
Yeah.
believe aliens are real. My master's degree is in astronomy. And ironically, as soon as I finished my math, like 2 weeks before I finished my master's degree in astronomy, is when my mediumship really kicked in.
That's
So,
cool.
I believe aliens are real. I believe the
Yeah.
universe is chock full of aliens. I believe we have lived lives on other planets, probably because I am completely obsessed with Mars and have been since I was in high school. So 40 years or whatever, 30 something years. If there was an ancient civilization on Mars, which I believe is completely possible, I
I
probably
agree.
there. So aliens would be in spirit. We are all probably aliens. We've all probably lived lives on other planets.
Yeah.
Because the universe, that's a whole other, that would take me another hour. But trust me, it's freaking huge. And there are hundreds of billions of other Earths at various degrees of evolution. All of the ingredients for life to exist on all the other planets is everywhere. Everywhere
Yeah.
we look, we find the ingredients for life. And so, yeah, why wouldn't aliens be able to be guides?
And that's to say the ingredients for life as we know it. There's nothing to
Correct.
say that a life on a planet couldn't be all sentient sea creatures, where
Correct.
because we don't know. And I love that. I have one question for you, Peaceful
Okay.
Nick.
Okay.
If you so being a scientist and with your mediumship and everything that you've learned in both fields, um, what do you believe is like the a bit more of the scientific process that's happening in mediumship when we are picking up
Oh,
loved ones?
nummy, nummy, nummy. I have an answer. This
Yes,
is
I
what,
hope I hoped you would.
so the little tiny, quick 30-second science lesson. There's something called
Yes.
quantum entanglement. Quantum, just
Yes.
okay. So particles can be connected. All particles have a twin particle. So A and B, let's say
Okay.
A and B. Particle A has a positive charge, particle B has a negative charge. If something causes particle A to go negative, immediately, instantaneously, no matter how far apart they are, it has the opposite reaction. They're
That's cool.
entangled. So our consciousness, our brain is made of particles. Our consciousness is made of particles, could be photons of light, some form of energy. Those particles can be entangled because we come from spirit with the spirit world, which is also energy. So there is no reason why we cannot be communicating with our particles that AB on off, on off, instantaneously across space and time in any dimension, because everything in the universe is entangled and can
Okay.
communicate instantaneously. And so
Love
we're
that.
overlapped with those energy particles. And it's all around us. It's in us. It's through us. Just like you said earlier, the quote about the spirit world being in between the empty spaces, because
Mm-hmm.
it's all energy and it
Yeah.
interacts immediately. No time. It can be a billion light years away. It doesn't take a billion light years to happen. It happens instantly. And that's why we can communicate. That was the shortest version I could do.
No, that was I love. I knew you would have the answer for that, and that's one of the big questions I want to ask. I wanted to get you on live for. If I could have had you for 5 minutes, you talk about that, or 5 hours, that question was
I can
coming up.
talk about it for hours.
Because my thing about it is that I grew up believing that there was a scientific process behind this, and I know that I actually know a little bit about quantum entanglement, a little bit of what you just explained about. That's all I know, but I've heard that, and I've enlisted that idea to what we do, and that everything has a cause and everything has an effect, and that can be manipulated from anywhere in the world. And
Mm-hmm.
spirituality, that's what we're doing when we're doing mysticism, when we're working with plants and things like that, and herbs and stones and things like that. I do crystal healing with people. I work with crystals. It's just my house. It could be it could be in a science museum. Um, Crystals are vibrating at a specific frequency. That frequency has
Yep.
parts of the body that it attaches to. If you do
Mm-hmm.
something with the crystal, the body will mess with it. And I told that to someone who came into a shop that I was working at one time, and they're like, "Well, I don't believe in this hooey." And I said, "Okay, question. This rose quartz is about 100,000 years old. My body, the physical body that I've had, is maybe less than that. You know, the human evolution is younger than quartz on this earth. Uh, Stone has perfected and hasn't changed in millennia. Our bodies change regularly. So, which
Mm-hmm.
one has the most sure energy? Which one is the most stronger, sure, most consistent energy? Well, probably the quartz. I said, okay. So, if I were to take this quartz and put it here, is my body going to attune to it or is it going to attune to me? And he said, well,
Mm-hmm.
you'd probably attune to it.
Right.
So that's how crystal healing works. And he's like, holy shit, wait, what?
You
And
made
I was like, yeah. And I was like, it's not hooey, it's science. And it's science that has not always been able to be proven just yet. But to me, it makes sense because, for instance, if you were to teach me about science, I'm going to listen to you because you have more knowledge about it, you studied it longer, and it is something that you are very sure of. So I'm going to assimilate to your knowledge. Whereas if I'm talking about Greek mythology and you may not have information about that, you might assimilate to mine. And for
yeah.
me, that's how energies work in spirituality and healing and things like that. And I tell people like you can be a super amazing medium from day one if you're just confident. If you go into it knowing it's going to work and trusting what you have and trusting that spirit is going to give you what you need and just
Trust.
going with it,
Yep. Yep.
you will attune to it really, really quickly because you have that firmament to do so.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
so, love that. Nick,
Um,
yes,
I was just gonna say I'm starving.
yes. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me on live today, Nick. I am really, really grateful. I would like to record a video for my YouTube where I interview about your science and your thoughts on the mixture
Awesome.
of science and spirit. But thank you
Can I
so much.
this and post it to my YouTube channel, and then
Of
you can
course.
download yours?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I mean, you
Yeah,
don't have to
always. No, 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 always sharing, always sharing.
and post them. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I'll
Absolutely.
be
I would never not do that.
okay. I will
Enjoy
be
your
happy.
dinner
Thank you. I'm having spaghetti,
and oh yum.
sausage.
We're making homemade pizzas with zucchini crust. So
Oh, that's so good.
I'm
I'm
very ready for
um
that.
thank everybody. Somebody Annan 1948 wants to know where you can buy the real crystals because there's a lot of fakes out there. And then Connoisseur said 2 minutes after my father passed across, he came to my room and gave me a message. It happens all the time because spirit, it's instant, instant. So where can they buy real crystals, Sean?
So I will always send them to thewitchdepot.com. So a friend of mine owns this shop and she is a big purveyor of crystals. And I know her personally and she's amazing. She's here in New Orleans. And she's very particular like me about what we buy. So you can always guarantee that you're going to get high quality, but really, really affordable crystals. And the
Website,
other,
Canada.
yeah,
What's the
yeah, I
website?
think it's thewitchdepot.com.
Thewitchdepot.com. Okay.
Yeah, and so I do believe she ships to Canada, so that shouldn't be a problem. And there was another place that I used to order online, but I ordered from her, and she has really great prices. The only reason I send people to her, just so there's no nepotism, is because of the quality that she purchases.
Okay.
Um, so that's really the reason why I send them to her. So
Sean, it's been lovely. I'm looking forward to our next meeting and we
absolutely,
exchange numbers and talk about that ancient civilization stuff because
yes,
I'm curious about it.
I love it. Have a
The
great
Witch,
night, Nick.
the Witch Depot, right? She's asking,
Yes,
what's the
completely
Witch
spelled out.
Depot?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Love you. Bye.
Absolutely. Y'all have a
Pam.
wonderful day and love and
Bye,
light,
Pam.
y'all.
Bye, Pam. Bye.